Despair, death, destruction. This is even bigger than the last crisis.
The official Foundation Season 2 trailer is here, and to no one's surprise, it looks great. There seems to be no shortage of elaborate set pieces coming our way, and you won't hear me complaining about that. As I mentioned in my Season 2 teaser breakdown, it's a little tricky to guess where any of this is heading. Because Season 1 ended with that epilogue of Salvor and Gaal meeting 130 years later, I'm inclined to think that everything we see here is that far in the future, with all the timelines synced up. Why do I think that? Well, there is a lot of either impending or active conflict in this trailer, and you would have to imagine that the Foundation would need those 100 years that have been mentioned in the promo materials to get prepared so that any conflict wouldn't end in slaughter. Also, the Empire's power needs to decline, which might be related to the decay of the ruling Cleons' genetic purity that we saw set in motion at the end of Season 1. Still, there's no guarantee that the new season will be structured that way. And where it gets even trickier to guess is that we do see some of the new characters that were cast for this season who are involved in different parts of the story. Before we get into what we see in this trailer, let's briefly look at how the story was laid out in Asimov's books. The book Foundation hurled through time over its 5 parts. Season 1 of the show completed the first 2 of those. The Psychohistorians, which was Harry and Gaal's introduction and their arrest on Trantor, which led to the exile, and then the Encyclopedists, which covered the development of Terminus. There were also some aspects of the third part, the Mayors, but that's where the story diverged in a serious way when Salvor left Terminus to go looking for her biological mother Gaal rather than staying and becoming a key mayor in the Foundation's development. This is where I could clarify that this is more of a remix than a direct adaptation. I'm sure I'm going to get dozens of comments pointing this out, but I think it's worth mentioning that 2 of the characters we get our first glimpse of here are from those first 2 books. Hober Mallow is from the part titled The Merchant Princes, and Bel Rios is from the part titled The General. Their timelines in the books don't really overlap, but we might see the show condense some things. I guess what's important as far as the story is concerned is that the second half of the first book and the first half of the second were focused on how the Foundation develops and expands its influence beyond Terminus. How they do that evolves and involves superior tech, a church of scientism, economic power through trading, and so on. Each advancement creates unique challenges, and as the Foundation evolves to deal with those, they also have to deal with the Seldon crises that psychohistory predicted. Can I connect those same dots with what I see in the trailer? Not exactly. But other than the stuff that was added to the show to keep the same characters around longer, things like the genetic dynasty and Harry's consciousness still being around, if I put that to the side, I can't rule out that they'll still pick up on some of the key points from the Mayors, the Traders, and the Merchant Princes before they move into the General. So what's actually in the trailer? It opens with a shot of Gaal on a new planet who tells us in voiceover that she has dreams sometimes about things that will happen, and she wakes up terrified. We have a shot of her with Salvor on Synax where we left them at the end of Season 1. Gaal's childhood home is mostly underwater now, and they had seemed stranded, but the trailer has several shots of Salvor's ship, the Beggar, which it looks like they're able to raise from the water and get operational so that they can travel around the galaxy. We see several shots of them doing that, including ones where we see Salvor engaged in combat. Whatever they're up to, it looks like they're going to run into some resistance. From the Season 2 announcement, we know that Harry, Gaal, and Salvor discover a colony of Mentalics with psionic abilities that threaten to alter psychohistory itself. I'd imagine this shot of Gaal surrounded by new characters is probably related to that, and some of the fighting I mentioned could be too, but based on the terrain and situations they're in, it also looks like they visit multiple places. The voiceover has Gaal talking about the second crisis, saying it's even bigger than the last one, and we also hear Salvor say that they need to be in the fight. It would make sense that as tensions build between Empire and the Foundation, they might try to make their way back toward Terminus, but the Beggar is not a jump ship. Remember, it used to belong to Hugo, who was much older than he appeared because he had spent a lot of time in cryosleep while he was doing his runs. If they are traveling to multiple places, then they may be diverging from the other storylines completely. That seems like a way that they could keep them involved in the story for multiple seasons, though, because unlike the Cleons, who have a new clone added to their cycle every 30 years, these two only have one natural life to live. That's not to say I have any idea what they're doing with it based on this trailer. As mentioned, they're definitely doing some fighting, and the shots of this kid are really interesting. He seems like he might be one of those Mentalics mentioned in the season announcement, but I can't say if any of these other shots are directly related to what's going on with him. Location-wise, the mechs we see here and that were in the teaser probably are, but these other shots of this character wearing goggles with fire in the background and the characters in the forest that Salvor's fighting all might be unrelated. There's also a shot where Gaal's eyes are clouded over in a way we've never seen before, so I'm interested in finding out what that is. For being a dead guy, there's quite a lot of Harry in this trailer, but not really any shots of him interacting with Gaal and Salvor. Remember, there are two versions of Harry's consciousness out there, the one that was contained in the handle of Rachel's knife, and the one in the vault. There's one shot of Harry where he's physically smashing something with a club or some other instrument that is probably related to Gaal, but most of the other shots where we see him seem to be connected to the Cleons. We hear Harry say, "For all of us to survive, we have to face them." Then later he says we fight for peace, not because we fear we will lose, but because we know that if there is a war, we will win. This is being delivered by a projection that looks like it's appearing on Trantor and talking to Brother Day. And while Harry is saying that, we see Day, who I imagine by now is Cleon the 17th or 18th. We see him on Terminus approaching the vault. And there is another shot where we see the vault opening, so those are probably related. We also hear him say that the Foundation is a threat to him, which of course makes you think that he must have just found out that Terminus wasn't destroyed like they were led to believe. And that puts him on this path of destruction that we see playing out in several of these shots. There have also been mentions of the Church of Seldon, and I mentioned in my teaser breakdown I thought these two characters in red might be related to that. Since then, I went back and checked the casting announcements, and that does appear to be the case. This is Brother Constant and Polly Verisov, and it looks like Day is making an example out of them. I don't think this is the same Polly who was a kid in season 1 because he would be extremely old by this point in the story, but I guess who knows? I mean, he could be a descendant or I could be totally wrong about the timelines. Considering his wrath has to be related to him finding out for the first time that the Foundation is still out there, that Terminus still exists, I still think it's more likely that this is pretty far into the future. Either way, there is a lot of Day in this trailer, and not much explanation for how the Dynasty is dealing with the problem of their genetic source material being corrupted. In the teaser, we did see Queen Sereth coming to visit him. There's not anything new related to that in the trailer. There is a nice shot of all three of them with Demerzel in the throne room. Day is standing there sort of looking over his shoulder, and in voiceover says that an empire breathes respect. It requires it for its life. Like the teaser, there's not a ton of Demerzel here. There's one really striking shot where she's looking at something in space, like something celestial. There's kind of a fiery reflection. This could be them blowing something up, but it's hard to say. There are also a lot of shots of this new character, Hober Mallow, who is someone who featured in the books, and some of his scenes seem to be connected to these floating robots or spacers. I mean, I went back to look at the spacers from season 1, and there are some similarities, but their eyes look totally different. So if I had to guess, I'd be leaning towards robots, which aren't supposed to exist at this time in the Empire. Hober Mallow did start out as a trader, so this may be related to technology. And I just want to say that it looks super cool, but I really don't know what is happening here. They seem to be floating and there seems to be a lot of them. So I hope this happens pretty early in the season because I'll be waiting to figure out what it is. There's also an interesting shot of the vault where you can see Hober Mallow's name projected on it. So again, I hope we do get to find out what's going on with this character sooner rather than later. There's also some quick shots of the new character Belrios, who I mentioned is in the first half of the second book. In the section titled The General, if they're following along with the book, he wouldn't come into play until later. And I guess it'll just come down to how much time they go through in this season and how many jumps ahead they have, and if they condense and combine some of these stories together. Because in one of these scenes, it looks like we see Hober Mallow and Belrios together. And in this shot where the character's not floating, it does look a lot like a robot. Speaking of Belrios, this shot of the man with the long hair that looks all disheveled appears to be the same actor, and even though I can't think of a reason why this would happen related to the books, it does appear to be him. And if you can trust the way that's cut together, it looks like Demerzel is going to wherever he is to find him. There's a lot of cool stuff in here that I can't say for sure how it's going to fit in. There's this shot of these charging winged animals being chased by ships where they take flight off of a cliff. Based on a later shot, that appears to be on the same planet where we saw that kid. Then there's this other shot of what appears to be a male figure that's sort of on display. It's just sitting there with these three connected circles. We see a young child approaching that who could possibly be a brother Dawn. It doesn't appear to be the same child actor that we saw last season, but he would obviously be a lot bigger, so I'm not sure. But we see him lurking around this chamber, which is all really mysterious. So to wrap it up, it looks like we're heading towards the second crisis. War between Foundation and Empire. It does seem like Gaal and Salvor will be off doing their own thing. Initially, I thought that would be related to the Second Foundation that Harry mentioned whenever they were on the Raven, but I don't really see anything related to Helicon, which was where that was supposed to be started, but maybe things have changed since he never arrived there. We'll see how close they stick to the books. The Church of Seldon could start to spread out, that could start to catch on, or if they're going with the traders, we might see them start to secure some economic power and influence that way. But it does appear that once the Cleons learn that they're still out there, they're going to be gunning for them, and it should be fun to see how that plays out. That seems like a great place to leave things. I am planning to cover the whole season just like I did for the first one. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.